If you've ever felt invisible, you'll understand this. The unanswered message. The call that never came. The silence that fills the room like fog, heavier than words could ever be. There is a particular kind of ache that comes not from being attacked, not from being rejected outright, but from being overlooked, as though your existence makes no ripple at all. It is not a sharp wound, but a hollow one. The absence of recognition, of acknowledgement, of presence. Sometimes the absence of someone feels louder than their presence ever did. The small deaths of everyday silence. It begins in small moments. You share your joy and no one listens. You pour your heart into kindness and no one notices. You reach out and your hand meets air. These are small deaths, silent, almost invisible in themselves, but together they weigh heavily on the soul. They whisper a cruel lie. You don't matter. You are unseen. You are forgettable. The truth is, being ignored can hurt more deeply than being openly rejected. Rejection at least acknowledges you exist. Silence erases you, the mirror of loneliness picture. A crowded room.
Laughter, conversation, the rise and fall of voices.
And yet, you stand there unseen as though the air itself swallows you whole. You smile, you nod, you try to blend, but inside you feel like glass. Transparent, fragile, breakable. Loneliness is not always about being alone.
It is often about being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen.
It is the invisible wall between your soul and theirs. You want to scream, "I am here!" but the words never come. Or if they do, they echo back unheard. This is the quiet torment of invisibility. The unanswered message. We live in a world where communication is constant, yet connection is rare. You send a message, carefully worded, carrying a piece of your heart.
Hours pass, days, the screen remains blank. Do they not care?
Did they forget?
Or are you simply not worth the effort?
The mind spirals in the silence, crafting stories, replaying scenarios, blaming yourself for the void. It is not just a message unanswered, it is your heart unanswered. And the ache grows deeper. The weight of absence, there is a peculiar heaviness to absence. You think it would be light, nothingness should weigh nothing, but no. Absence can press on the chest, suffocate the lungs, steal the breath. The absence of a reply, the absence of affection, the absence of someone who once made you feel visible. Absence echoes.
Grows larger in the mind than presence ever did.
When someone is gone, their silence takes up more space than their words once filled. The cruel questions. Invisibility breeds cruel questions. Am I not interesting enough?
Not lovable enough? Not worth remembering?
You begin to scan yourself for flaws as though invisibility must be your fault. You overanalyze every word you said, every gesture you made. You wonder if you simply take up space that others would rather you didn't. The cruelest part. These questions have no answers. And yet they echo endlessly in the corridors of the heart. The ache. Behind the smile. Good people often hide this ache behind a smile. They nod, they laugh, they continue to give, while inside they are crumbling under the weight of being unseen. You've met them. Perhaps you are them. The one who remembers birthdays but whose own is forgotten. The one who listens to everyone's pain but whose silence goes unnoticed. The one who shines light for others but is left in the dark. The world looks at their smile and sees strength, but that smile is a mask stretched over the bruises of invisibility. Why it hurts so deeply? Why does being ignored cut so deeply? Because we were made to be seen. From the moment of birth, the infant seeks the eyes of its mother. Recognition, attention, acknowledgement, these are not luxuries. They are needs. To be seen is to be validated in your very existence. So when you are unseen, when your presence feels like it does not register, the ache is primal. It is not vanity.
It is not weakness.
It is the most human of hungers unmet, the hunger to matter. The night is the loudest. In the quiet of night, invisibility screams the loudest. You replay the silences of the day. You scroll through unanswered messages. You stare into the ceiling and wonder if your absence would make any difference at all. And though the world sleeps, your mind does not. It circles the ache like a moth around flame, restless, uneasy, longing to be recognized, if only by one soul. The night magnifies the ache of being invisible, the tender truth, but let me tell you, a truth that invisibility tries to hide. You are not unseen, not by God, not by the universe, not by the truth of your being. Others may overlook you. They may dismiss your presence, take your kindness for granted, ignore the weight of your silence. But your existence carries meaning that cannot be erased by human neglect. The ache of being invisible is real, yes, but invisibility itself is a lie. You were born visible. You were created with intention. You are already seen, even if human eyes fail to notice. A seed of recognition, even in your darkest loneliness. There are glimpses, small moments, that remind you visibility exists. The stranger who smiles at you in passing, the child who waves without hesitation, the song that plays at just the right moment, making you feel known by the universe itself. These are seeds of recognition scattered in the soil of your invisibility. They are reminders. You are not erased. From ache to awakening. And here lies the paradox. The ache of invisibility, though cruel, has a hidden gift. It awakens in you a deeper empathy for others. Because you have known what it is to be unseen, you learn to see others more clearly. You notice the quiet one at the edge of the room. You hear the unsaid words behind someone's silence. You become the kind of person who makes others feel visible because you know how precious that gift is. The ache becomes awakening. Closing reflection. If you have felt invisible,
Let me say this clearly. I see you. I recognize your pain.
I acknowledge the ache you carry. You matter. You always have, and though invisibility tells you otherwise, your existence ripples in ways you cannot measure. Your presence shifts the world more than you realize. Silence is never empty. It is full of power, full of intent, full of meaning. And once you begin to see it, you can never unsee it. What feels like neglect on the surface is often something darker, sharper, more deliberate. Silence is not always absence, it is often a weapon,
A tool, a strategy.
and the brutal truth is this: when someone ignores you, it is rarely neutral. Silence is control. Think of silence in a relationship. One person speaks, the other refuses to respond. Words hang in the air like ghosts, unanswered, unwelcome. This is not forgetfulness. It is dominance. Psychologists call it stonewalling, withholding response to assert control. The one who stays silent forces the other into a position of doubt and desperation. They decide when the conversation begins and when it ends. They hold the emotional leash. It is the oldest trick of power to make someone question their worth by refusing to acknowledge them. When you are invisible to another, you are easier to control. The shadow of avoidance. Not every silence is calculated. Some silences are born from fear. Avoidance masquerades as indifference, but underneath it trembles anxiety. There are people who retreat into silence because facing conflict terrifies them. They ignore you not because you don't matter, but because they cannot handle the discomfort of confrontation. But here lies the sting. Avoidance still leaves you with the ache of invisibility. Fear may explain their silence, but it does not ease your wound. You are left carrying the burden of their cowardice. Indifference in its coldest form, then there is indifference. The coldest silence of all, not strategic,
Not anxious.
simply empty. Indifference says you are not worth the energy of response. It is not manipulation. It is not fear. It is dismissal. And perhaps this is the most brutal silence because it reveals the harsh truth that some people do not value you the way you value them. The mirror is clear and the reflection is painful. The silent punishment. Silence is also used as punishment. You made a mistake.
You voiced an opinion.
You set a boundary. And suddenly, you are met with a wall of nothingness. This is the silent treatment, a form of emotional punishment that withholds validation, connection, and comfort. It is designed to make you bend, to make you beg, to make you regret ever standing up for yourself. It works because humans are wired to seek connection. To be cut off from it triggers primal fear, the same fear as exile from a tribe. The silent punishment weaponizes your need for belonging. The illusion of innocence. The cruelty of silence lies in its innocence.
After all, what's wrong with not saying anything?
What's wrong with choosing not to reply? But silence communicates. It says, I will not give you the dignity of response. It says, I will control the narrative by refusing to participate in it. Words can be denied.
Silence cannot.
Its message is ambiguous enough to protect the one who wields it, but sharp enough to wound the one who receives it. It is violence disguised as peace. Stories of silence. Think of the parent who withdraws love from a child when they misbehave. Think of the partner who freezes the other out for days. Think of the friend who suddenly stops replying, offering no reason, no closure, no explanation. Each silence is different, but the message is the same. My absence controls you more than my presence ever could. The ancient psychology power and silence are as old as humanity. In ancient courts, kings did not need to speak to condemn. A glance away, a refusal to acknowledge was enough to signal disfavor. Silence was judgment. Silence was exile. Silence was death without a sword. Today, the costumes have changed, but the psychology is the same. When someone refuses to engage, they echo those ancient patterns of dominance and dismissal. Silence in modern communication. Social media has given silence a new stage. Ghosting is the modern ritual of invisibility. One day, connection is alive. The next, it is gone without explanation. Ghosting cuts deeper than rejection because it denies you the dignity of closure. It rewrites the story mid-sentence and leaves you suspended in confusion. The message is clear: you are not worth even a goodbye. And though we tell ourselves it is normal, it leaves scars deeper than we admit. Why silence hurts? More than words, even harsh ones, give shape to conflict. They can be argued with, understood, resolved. Silence offers nothing to hold, nothing to fight, nothing to heal. This nothingness is precisely what makes it brutal. The human mind cannot process absence easily. It fills the silence with fear, self-blame, and stories. That is why silence is not neutral. It is active. It forces you to do the work of interpretation, while the one who withholds it escapes accountability. The power dynamic: when someone ignores you, they shift the power balance. They decide the terms of engagement. They turn connection into currency and you into a beggar for recognition. It is not always conscious, but it is always powerful. And the ache you feel is not weakness, it is your spirit resisting the theft of dignity. A personal mirror, but here's the unsettling part. Silence also reflects the person who wields it. When someone chooses silence, it reveals their patterns, their fears, their limitations. Silence can reveal immaturity, the inability to face discomfort. Silence can reveal cruelty, the delight in control. Silence can reveal emptiness, the absence of care. In this way, their silence speaks volumes, not about you, but about them. The deeper wound, still knowing this does not erase the wound, because the wound of silence is not just intellectual, it is emotional. It stabs at the heart's deepest need, to be recognized, to be valued, to be real in someone else's world. And that is why silence lingers, why you replay it at night, why unanswered messages feel heavier than full conversations. Silence stirs your deepest fear. Maybe I really don't matter. The hidden motives, so let us strip away the illusion. When someone ignores you, there are only a few motives behind it. They want control. They want to avoid conflict. They do not care enough to engage. These are not comfortable truths, but they are liberating ones. Because once you see the motive, you can stop making excuses for silence. You can stop blaming yourself for what is often their own weakness, strategy, or indifference. The unsettling realization, the brutal truth of power and silence is this: ignoring someone is never just about forgetting. It is always a choice, whether conscious or unconscious. And in that choice, they reveal more than they intend. They show you how much, or how little, you truly matter in their world. That realization may sting. It may feel unbearable. But it is also the first step toward clarity. Closing. Reflection silence is not empty. It is full of power, of control, of avoidance, of indifference. To be ignored is not a random accident. It is a mirror of the other person's character. And while their silence wounds you, it also unmasks them. Have you ever noticed how silence doesn't just stay outside of you? It creeps inward. It seeps beneath your skin. And soon, the silence out there becomes noise in here, in your head, in your chest, in the fragile space where your thoughts and feelings collide. Being ignored does not simply wound the heart, it wages war on the mind. The first strike. Doubt, it begins with the simplest question. Why? Why didn't they answer? Why did they look through me as if I wasn't there?
Why did they let my words hang unanswered in the air?
This single why blooms into 1,000 possibilities.
And instead of easing the ache, every possibility cuts deeper. Did I say something wrong?
Did I push too hard?
Am I not enough? Am I too much?
Silence has a way of transforming the ordinary into the unbearable. What could be nothing at all suddenly feels like everything. The spiral of overthinking. The mind does not like emptiness. When someone gives you silence, your thoughts rush in to fill the void. You replay conversations word for word. You analyze pauses, tones, looks that may not have meant anything but now seem heavy with meaning. You create entire stories to explain what their silence must mean. It's like standing before a locked door with no key. And so you keep rattling the handle again and again, hoping the lock will somehow open. Overthinking is not madness, it is desperation. It is the mind clawing for certainty in the fog of invisibility. Self-blame. The poison. Within, when answers don't come, the next turn is inward. If they won't tell you why, you tell yourself why.
And almost always the story is cruel. It must be me. I must have ruined it. I must be the problem. This is how silence turns into poison.
It convinces you that you are defective, unworthy, or burdensome. It does not whisper this once, it repeats it, echoing in your head until the lie begins to feel like truth. Rejection plants seeds, but your own mind waters them. And soon you are living in a garden of self-blame, choking on weeds that were never meant to grow there. The craving for acknowledgement. There is a reason being ignored hurts more than being insulted. At least insults recognize you exist. Silence erases you. The heart, wired for connection, begins to starve. It craves acknowledgement the way a body craves air. Even a single word, even a glance, could break the suffocating pressure. That is why you find yourself checking your phone again and again. That is why you reread old messages, replay old memories, chase even the faintest sign that you are still seen. It is not weakness, it is biology. Humans are tribal by nature. To be invisible feels like exile, and exile feels like death, insecurity, Awakened silence does not only trigger doubt and self-blame, it awakens every insecurity you thought you buried. The childhood wound of not being chosen, the teenage ache of being left out, the adult fear of never being enough for love, for friendship, for belonging. Every scar you thought had faded begins to burn again. Because silence is not just about this moment, it reopens every moment you were ever made to feel invisible. The mirror of rejection, the cruelest part. Silence makes you believe the other person's choice is a mirror of your worth. If they ignore you, you must be ignorable. If they dismiss you, you must be disposable. If they do not respond, you must not matter. And though you know logically this cannot be the whole truth, the emotional weight crushes logic. Your heart does not measure worth by reason. It measures worth by response. And when there is no response, it assumes there is no worth. The war zone. Inside, so now, inside you, there are two forces at battle. One whispers, maybe I deserve this. Maybe I am not enough. The other screams, no, I am worth more than this silence. It is exhausting, this war. Sleepless nights, the restless thoughts, the emotional whiplash between anger and longing, dignity and desperation. You are at war with yourself, because silence has forced you to fight on ground that was never meant to be a battlefield. The claustrophobia of being unseen. Rejection is not just painful, it is claustrophobic. It makes the walls close in. You look around and feel that no one notices you. You speak and feel that no one hears you. Even when you're with others, the wound whispers that you are invisible. It is like screaming in a crowded room while no one turns their head. It is like being trapped behind glass, pressing your hands against it while life continues on the other side. This claustrophobia drains you. It shrinks your spirit until you feel small enough to disappear. The loneliness in noise. The strangest part of rejection is how it creates loneliness, even in noise. You could be surrounded by laughter, conversation, music, and still feel utterly alone, because loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of recognition. And when the one you long for refuses to acknowledge you, no crowd can fill the void. This is why ignored messages sting more than unread books, more than unanswered questions on a test. Books and questions don't owe you recognition. People do. When the mind becomes the enemy, the longer silence lingers, the more dangerous it becomes. Your own mind begins to turn against you. Instead of being your refuge, it becomes your accuser. Instead of being your ally, it becomes the echo chamber of rejection. It does not let you rest. It replays, it rewinds. It reopens wounds again and again until you are exhausted, and still, you crave the very person who has hurt you because the wound they opened is the only thing that could close it. Why the brain reacts. This way, there is science behind the storm. Studies show that social rejection activates the same parts of the brain as physical pain. That's why the ache of silence feels like a stab, a burn, a pressure in your chest. Your body does not know the difference between a punch to the skin and a wound to the heart. Pain is pain, and silence delivers it mercilessly. This is why you can't just get over it. Why the craving for acknowledgement feels primal.
Because in a way it is.
The identity erosion, perhaps the most devastating part of rejection, is how it erodes identity. You begin to question not only what you did, but who you are. Am I lovable?
Am I worthy? Am I even real to anyone?
This erosion is subtle. It does not happen all at once. But slowly, silence chips away at your confidence, your sense of self, your very identity. Until the reflection in the mirror is not someone you recognize, but someone you doubt, the hidden addiction rejection creates a paradoxical pull. The more someone ignores you, the more you long for their recognition. It is like thirst in a desert. The less water you have, the more desperately you crave it. Even if the source is poisoned, you still crawl toward it. This is why people chase after those who hurt them. Not because they are weak, but because rejection creates a craving stronger than reason. The very silence that wounds you is the silence you want to break, no matter the cost. The trap of comparison rejection also feeds comparison. If they are not responding to me, who are they responding to? If I am invisible, who is visible to them? Suddenly every like on their social media, every laugh with someone else, every glance they give another feels like salt in the wound. You begin to measure your worth against others, not by who you are, but by who they choose. And that measurement is always unfair, always incomplete, always cruel. The endless loop, so the war inside continues. Doubt, blame, craving, comparison, exhaustion, and back again. Silence does not simply end.
It circles.
It traps you in a loop where every turn cuts deeper. And the more you try to escape by thinking your way through it, the tighter the loop becomes.
The silence has no answers.
And so the mind, desperate for answers, turns against itself. Closing reflection, this is what rejection does to the mind. It is not a scratch. It is not a bruise. It is a war, relentless, consuming, exhausting. Silence does not only live outside of you, it invades you. It rewrites your thoughts. It whispers lies into your identity. It makes you doubt your worth and crave what destroys you. There comes a moment when the war inside no longer rages. Not because it has been won, but because the fighter is too tired to keep standing. This is the collapse of the spirit, the place where silence doesn't just wound your mind, but begins to shatter the very core of who you are. At first, you thought you could reason through it. You told yourself they were busy, that it wasn't personal, that you were overthinking. Then the storm of Section 3 began. Overthinking, self-blame, craving. But now the silence has lingered too long. It has shifted from something you notice into something you live inside. Silence is no longer around you. It is your prison. When exhaustion becomes numbness, the human heart cannot run forever on unanswered questions. The mind cannot endlessly spin without burning itself out. And so, after the spirals of thought comes the collapse into numbness. You stop asking why. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop expecting a response. But this is not peace. It is surrender. A heavy kind of resignation. Like a prisoner who has stopped rattling the bars, not because freedom has come, but because hope has died. Loss of self-worth. In this prison, identity begins to decay. When you are ignored long enough, you begin to see yourself as unworthy of being seen. Every unanswered call, every unreturned glance, every cold silence carves away another piece of self-esteem. You don't just wonder if you are enough, you conclude that you are not. It is no longer they didn't answer me. It becomes, I am not worth answering. This is the most dangerous transformation silence creates. It shifts from being their choice to being your identity. The trauma response psychologists call this collapse a trauma response. Silence mimics the primal terror of abandonment. The nervous system interprets rejection as danger, as exile from the tribe, as a threat to survival itself. That is why silence feels unbearable. Why it is not just in your head. Why it leaves you trembling, restless, unable to breathe. Your body remembers every wound of neglect, every childhood moment of being unseen, every attachment rupture. When silence is repeated, the nervous system eventually shuts down. This is collapse, what trauma researchers describe as the freeze response. The body conserves energy. The mind goes quiet. You appear calm, but inside you are broken. The inner cell, imagine, a prison cell built not of bricks, but of absence. The walls are made of what is missing. The door is made of what is unsaid. The air is thick with everything withheld. You live inside this cell when silence defines your world. You are not bound by chains, but by the lack of response. Not guarded by soldiers, but by the indifference of someone who does not see you. The cruelest part of this prison is that it is invisible to everyone else. To the outside world, you look fine. You go to work, you smile at strangers, you keep moving. But inside, you are sitting in a cell no one else can see. The silence of people versus the silence of God. For some, this collapse carries another layer of pain, the silence of God. It is one thing to be ignored by people, but when you cry out in prayer and feel only emptiness, it feels unbearable. You ask, why would God, who claims to be close to the broken-hearted, remain silent now? Is his silence abandonment? Is it punishment? Is it proof you are not worthy of love, not even divine love? The silence of people cuts deep, but the silence of God cuts into the soul. It makes you question not just your worth, but your faith, your very reason for living. When hope disappears, rejection can feel survivable when you believe it is temporary, but when silence stretches on, days into weeks, weeks into months, hope begins to fade. You no longer wait for a message. You no longer expect an answer. You stop telling yourself stories of why they might return. Instead, you accept the silence as reality. But in accepting it, you feel something inside you die. Not all at once, but slowly, as hope withers leaf by leaf. This death is not loud, it is quiet. And that quietness is what makes it terrifying. The collapse of relationships. When you collapse under silence, relationships become fragile. You begin to withdraw, afraid of repeating the same invisibility. You stop sharing openly. You stop trusting easily. You become cautious with your love, guarding it like a prisoner protecting scraps of bread. Some people build walls. Others disappear into people-pleasing, hoping that if they are endlessly kind, they will never be ignored again. Both are prisons, one of stone, the other of chains. Silence has changed the way you relate. It has rewritten the map of your heart. Spiritual despair, spiritually collapse feels like exile. You read sacred words about being loved, chosen, seen by God, and yet you feel unseen, unheard, abandoned. This despair is not simply emotional, it is existential. It asks, if even God is silent, what hope is left? The Psalms cry out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" This ancient prayer echoes in your chest, reminding you that despair has always been part of the human journey. But knowing others have felt it doesn't erase the weight of your own. The shadow of meaninglessness. Collapse is not just the absence of hope, it is the absence of meaning. If my voice does not matter to others, why speak? If my presence does not matter to anyone, why exist? This shadow creeps in during collapse, the thought that perhaps nothing matters, perhaps life is just an endless silence. It is here that despair deepens into something darker, something dangerous. The mask you wear, but even in collapse, life demands performance. So you wear a mask, you smile when you are breaking, you laugh when you want to scream, you keep moving, but inside you are already still. This mask fools the world, but it does not fool you. And the dissonance between the outer self and the inner self deepens the prison walls. No one knows how close you are to breaking. And that loneliness is perhaps the cruelest silence of all. When collapse becomes identity over time, the prison of silence becomes more than a place. It becomes who you are. You begin to identify as the unseen one, the unchosen one, the one always waiting, never answered. This identity is heavy, but it is familiar. And in some twisted way, it begins to feel safer than hope, because at least in despair, there are no expectations. This is the deepest collapse, not just being wounded, but being defined by the wound. Psychology meets faith. Psychology says silence wounds because we are wired for attachment. When connection is withheld, the brain interprets it as danger. Faith says silence wounds because we were created to be seen, to be loved, to belong. When both psychology and faith agree on this truth, the collapse becomes understandable. You are not weak for breaking under silence. You are human. But even in this breaking, something else begins. Though you may not see it yet, collapse is not the end. It is the ground where something new can take root. A glimpse beneath the ashes. Even now, under the weight of despair, there is something stirring. Because collapse clears the illusions, it strips away the masks. It shows you the raw truth of your need for love, for recognition, for something greater than silence. And sometimes it is only in collapse that you are desperate enough to reach for something beyond yourself. Something more than human recognition,
Something eternal.
Closing reflection, silence begins as absence. Then it becomes a wound. Then it becomes a prison. And in that prison, the spirit collapses under the weight of invisibility. You lose self-worth. You lose meaning. You question both people and God. You wear masks. You forget who you are. But strangely, even here in the ashes, something waits. Because collapse is not only the end, it is also the beginning. Opening. We've spoken of silence as psychology, as prison, as collapse. But sometimes the most powerful way to understand silence is through stories. Because silence doesn't happen in theory, it happens in lives, in friendships and marriages, in families and prayers whispered at night. Every ignored call, every unanswered plea, every quiet abandonment, these are not just concepts but moments etched into real human hearts. So let me tell you some stories. Not all of them will be yours, but pieces of them might feel like looking into a mirror. Story 1. The Friend Who Vanished. Sarah had a best friend, Mia. For years they shared everything, late night talks, dreams, secrets, heartbreaks. Then one day, Mia stopped responding. No fight,
No explanation, just
silence. At first, Sarah thought it was a busy week. Then she sent another text.
and another.
The days stretched. She could see Mia posting online, laughing in pictures, living life, just not with her. The silence said nothing, and yet it screamed, "You are no longer wanted." Sarah replayed every memory, asking herself what she had done wrong. But the truth was simpler and crueler. Sometimes people walk away without offering closure, and the silence left Sarah carrying questions she would never answer. Have you ever had a friend vanish like that? Then you know the ache that follows you like a shadow. Story 2. The Lover Who Pulled Away. David loved fiercely. He gave his whole heart. But over time, he noticed the messages took longer to come. The warmth in her voice cooled. The affection slipped away piece by piece until one day she stopped answering altogether. No breakup,
No closure.
just a void where love had once lived. David stayed up at night staring at the glow of his phone, praying for a single word. But silence became the new language of their relationship. And in that silence, David's heart didn't just break, it began to doubt its own worth. Was he too much?
Not enough. Forgettable?
Replaceable?
Lovers know silence can hurt more than words.
Because at least words, however painful, are an answer. Silence leaves you begging for echoes. Story 3. The child at the dinner table. Ella was 10 years old. At family dinners she tried to speak. She told stories about school, about the picture she drew in art class, about the friend who made her laugh, but no one listened. Her father scrolled on his phone. Her mother rushed to clean dishes. Her brother interrupted, and Ella learned that her voice did not matter. It wasn't cruelty, it wasn't intentional, but the silence she received as a child became the silence she carried into adulthood. She grew into a woman who second-guessed her words, who apologized for existing, who feared speaking up. Sometimes the deepest scars of silence come not from rejection, but from neglect, from simply not being heard. Story 4. The worker in the corner mark sat in office meetings where his ideas went unnoticed. He spoke, but no one responded. 10 minutes later, someone repeated his thought, and suddenly it was brilliant. Mark stopped sharing. He stopped raising his hand. He showed up, but he was invisible, and the worst part, no one even noticed that he had gone quiet. Workplace silence is a quieter form of rejection, but it slowly eats away at dignity. It whispers, "You don't matter here, you're replaceable." Story 5. The prayer that echoed back, and then there's silence of another kind. Amira knelt to pray every night, pouring out her heart. She prayed for healing, for guidance, for the strength to endure. She prayed with tears streaming down her face, but heaven stayed quiet. Days turned into months. The silence of God felt heavier than any silence of people. And in that silence, Amira began to wonder if God was listening at all. This is perhaps the hardest silence to carry, the divine silence, because it shakes the very foundation of faith, the shared thread. Do you notice the thread running through each of these stories? A friend, a lover, a family, a workplace, even God. Different faces, different settings, but the same wound, invisibility. Silence makes us question not just relationships, but ourselves. It makes us wonder if we matter, if we belong, if we are loved. Each story is unique, but the ache is universal. Parable 1. The empty chair. Let me tell you a parable. A man hosted a great banquet. He prepared the table with food, with light, with music. He invited friends to join, but when the feast began, one chair was empty. He had saved it for someone who never arrived. And all night, though the food was abundant and the laughter loud, his eyes kept drifting back to that empty chair. That's what silence does. It becomes the empty chair at the banquet of your heart. Everything else could be present, but your eyes cannot let go of what is missing. Parable 2. The locked door. A woman knocked on a door, hoping someone she loved would open it. She knocked gently, then louder, then desperately. Inside there was movement. She knew they were there, but the door never opened. Finally, exhausted, she sank to the ground outside. The door never gave an answer, and that non-answer became the cruelest answer of all. This is the parable of silence. A door that never opens, leaving you to collapse on the threshold. Why we tell stories? We tell these stories not to reopen wounds, but to let you see that you are not alone in your silence. Every story is a mirror. For some, the reflection is a lost friendship. For others, a distant parent. For others still, unanswered prayers. Silence wears many disguises, but it always leaves the same scar. The feeling of not being seen. But stories can also heal. Here is the beauty. Stories don't just wound, they also heal. When you hear Sarah's story of her vanished friend, maybe you finally realize your own ghosting wasn't your fault. When you hear Ella's story of being ignored at the dinner table, maybe you understand why your adult voice trembles when you speak up. When you hear Amira's story of unanswered prayers, maybe you realize even your doubts are part of a larger human struggle. Stories reveal patterns. They remind us that silence is not just our private curse, it is a shared human experience. And in seeing the pattern, we begin to glimpse a way through. Closing reflection. We began this section by saying silence isn't theory, it's lived. And now you've heard the faces of silence. The abandoned friend, the ghosted lover, the overlooked child, the invisible worker, the believer praying into emptiness. Each story hurts. Each one echoes. Each one whispers, you are not alone in this pain. But here's the secret. These stories don't end in silence. They are only the beginning. Because when we step back, when we see the patterns, we also see the possibility of awakening. And that's where we go next. There comes a moment in every journey through pain where the question changes. At first you ask, what did I do wrong? But slowly, painfully, a deeper question emerges. Maybe it wasn't me at all. This is the moment of awakening, the shift from seeing silence as proof of your unworthiness to seeing it as a mirror of someone else's limitations. The turning point, think back to the stories we shared. Sarah's friend who vanished, David's lover who pulled away, Ella's parents who didn't listen, Amira's unanswered prayers. For each of them, the instinct was the same: to blame themselves. Sarah thought she must have ruined the friendship. David thought he wasn't enough. Ella thought her voice was too small. Amira thought her faith was too weak. But what if silence wasn't evidence of their flaws at all? What if silence was exposing something about the other side? This is the awakening, to recognize that silence often reveals their immaturity, their avoidance, their inability to show up, not your lack of worth. Silence as projection sometimes. Silence is projection. A friend stops responding because they cannot face their own guilt. A lover withdraws because commitment terrifies them. A parent goes quiet because they never learned how to listen. In each case, the silence is not about you. It is about them reflecting their fear, insecurity, or avoidance outward. It's like standing in front of a broken mirror. The reflection is distorted, but the distortion belongs to the glass, not to your face. Silence as cowardice. Sometimes silence is cowardice. It's easier to ghost than to confront, easier to avoid than to explain, easier to disappear than to admit fault. This isn't strength.
This isn't wisdom.
It's weakness wrapped in quiet. When someone chooses silence instead of honesty, they are protecting themselves at the expense of your peace. And that choice speaks volumes, not about your worth, but about their fear. Silence is immaturity, and sometimes silence is immaturity. Children hide when they don't want to be caught. Adults do the same, just with more sophisticated excuses. Some people never grow the courage to have difficult conversations. Some people never develop the empathy to realize what silence does to another soul. Their silence is not a verdict on your value, it is evidence of their stunted growth. The mirror effect. Here's the truth. Silence reveals more about the silent than the silenced. It tells you about their fears, their avoidance, their inability to handle intimacy, responsibility, or truth. And yet, because silence is so loud in your heart, you mistake their behavior as your reflection. But in reality, you are simply standing in front of a cracked mirror, mistaking its fractures for your flaws. A hard question, let me ask you something. If silence truly meant you were unworthy, why do so many good, kind, loving souls experience it? Why does silence happen to the best of people, the loyal friends, the faithful lovers, the gentle children, the prayerful believers? The answer is simple. Silence does not measure worth. Silence exposes character. A shift in power. Do you feel the shift already? When you begin to see silence for what it is, a projection, a cowardice, an immaturity, you take back the power it once stole from you. Suddenly their ignoring you is no longer the final word. It's just a sad truth about where they are in their journey. And in that realization, you awaken to this truth. Silence does not define you, it defines them. Story reflection. Remember Sarah, who lost her friend? Sarah thought she must have done something unforgivable. But as years passed, she realized Mia disappeared not because Sarah was unworthy, but because Mia lacked the courage to explain. Remember David, who was ghosted in love? He thought he was too much. But later, he understood. It was not that he was too much, but that she was not enough to receive his love. Remember Ella, the overlooked child? She thought her voice was small, but in truth her family's ears were closed. The awakening is not to erase the pain of silence, but to shift its meaning.
It hurts, yes, but it no longer defines you as...
Confrontation with reality, let's be clear. This awakening isn't comfortable. To admit that silence is projection or cowardice or immaturity is to admit something about the other person. They weren't who you hoped they were. It's easier to blame yourself, because at least then the world feels controllable. If you were the problem, you could fix yourself and be loved again. But awakening means accepting this painful truth. Sometimes people fail you. Sometimes their silence is proof not of your lack, but of their inability to love, to listen, to stay. And that realization is both devastating
and liberating. The first breath of freedom, when you stop blaming yourself for their silence.
You take the first breath of freedom. You realize you are not unworthy. You are not invisible. You are simply in front of someone who could not or would not see you. And once you see that clearly, you begin to step out of the prison of self-blame. The awakening. Metaphor, think of silence. Like a locked door you've been banging on for years. You believed if you just knocked harder, louder, they would open. The awakening is the moment you realize the door is not locked because of you.
It's locked because of them, and suddenly you stop knocking.
Not because you don't care, but because you finally see the silence was never about your worth. Awakening. Through faith, even with God, silence is not absence. The unanswered prayer does not mean you are abandoned. Sometimes silence is God's way of drawing you deeper, refining your patience, teaching you trust. The divine silence is not cruelty, it is mystery. And mystery, unlike human silence, is not rejection, it is preparation. So even here, the awakening applies. Silence may feel like a wall, but sometimes it's a veil, hiding something greater to be revealed in time. Empowerment. This is where power returns to your heart, because once you see silence clearly, you are no longer its prisoner. You are no longer chained to self-blame. Instead, you stand awake, aware, and able to say, your silence says more about you than it ever could about me. And in that sentence is the seed of healing. Closing reflection. This awakening doesn't erase the ache, but it transforms it. Silence still hurts. But now, instead of cutting into your worth, it becomes a revelation of theirs. Instead of being a mirror of your flaws, it becomes a window into their limitations. And once you see the silence clearly, you are ready to take the next step, the path of healing. There is a danger in pain that no one warns you about. Not just the danger of being broken, but the danger of becoming hard. When silence wounds you, you face a choice. Will you close your heart to protect it, or will you keep it alive enough to heal? This is where true healing begins, not in shutting down, but in learning how to stay soft without staying shattered. The gentle path, forward healing, is not about erasing what happened. It's about changing how it lives inside you. Yes, they ignored you. Yes, silence burned you. But if you let that pain calcify, you become someone else, cold, distant, armored. And while the armor may protect, it also suffocates. Healing without hardening means you protect your heart, but you don't bury it. You set boundaries, but you still allow love. You reclaim dignity, but you don't lose compassion. Boundary as healing. The first step in healing is boundaries. Silence taught you something. Not everyone deserves full access to your soul. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your deepest thoughts. A boundary is not a wall. It is a doorway with a lock. You still have doors. You still invite people in. But now you hold the key. Boundaries are the way you teach others how to treat you. and how you protect yourself from being shattered again. Dignity restored. The second step is reclaiming dignity. When you were ignored, you felt small, unseen, unworthy. Silence stripped something from you. Healing means standing back up, not to beg for attention, but to remember your worth was never theirs to give or take. Imagine a crown knocked from your head. For a while you crawled on the floor searching for it, believing they had stolen it. But healing is the moment you realize the crown was always yours. You simply needed to lift it again. Learning detachment. The third step is detachment. Detachment is not indifference, it's freedom. It's learning that someone else's silence no longer controls your peace. You may never get the explanation, the closure, the apology you deserved, but you can detach. You can step back and say, their silence belongs to them. My peace belongs to me. This is how healing takes root, by loosening the grip of needing them to act differently before you can feel whole again. Trusting your voice. Again, the fourth step is trusting your voice again. Being ignored silences you. It makes you doubt whether speaking matters at all. Healing means reclaiming your voice, slowly but surely. It may begin with journaling, speaking to God in prayer, or opening up to a safe friend. Each word you release is an act of defiance against the silence that once caged you. Your voice is not weak because it was ignored. Your voice is powerful precisely because you choose to use it again. The candle metaphor, healing without hardening, is like a candle. A candle has fire, but it also has wax. The fire warms and lights. The wax protects and sustains. If you only burn, you will consume yourself. If you only harden, you will never shine. But if you balance the two, burning and holding, you become light. This is the balance of healing. Fire without rage, strength without bitterness, softness without collapse. A story of healing. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man named Jonas. He had been ignored by his closest friends after a failure. The silence nearly destroyed him. He vowed never to trust again, never to open his heart. But years later, he met a mentor who said, "Jonas, if you close your heart to keep out pain, you also close it to joy. Don't let their silence rob you of future love." Jonas began slowly. He set boundaries, he chose better people, he spoke when he felt afraid. Over time, he discovered a truth. His gentleness was not weakness, it was his greatest strength. The faith perspective. Even in faith, healing without hardening matters. God himself does not harden in response to human silence. He continues to speak, to reach, to love, and if the creator of the universe remains soft toward his children, even when they ignore him, then surely our healing can mirror that divine softness. Boundaries protect you, but faith keeps you open to love again. Practical steps. Pause before reacting. When someone ignores you, resist the urge to chase or to shut down. Breathe. Let the silence reveal itself before deciding what it means. Journal the truth. Write, "Their silence does not define my worth." Repeat until your heart absorbs it. Choose safe. People, healing doesn't mean trusting everyone again. It means carefully choosing who earns your openness. Affirm your voice. Speak daily, even small truths to remind yourself. You matter. Your words matter. Pray for softness. Ask God not only for healing, but for the strength to remain tender. The danger of bitterness. Bitterness is the counterfeit of healing. It pretends to protect you, but it poisons you instead. Healing without hardening means you refuse to let silence make you bitter. You learn to walk away without carrying the weight of resentment. It doesn't mean forgetting.
It doesn't mean excusing.
It means choosing freedom over chains. A reflection. Exercise. Close your eyes. Imagine the person who ignored you. Imagine their silence. Now imagine placing that silence in their hands, not yours. Say quietly, "This belongs to you, not me." Then picture yourself walking away lighter, freer, carrying only what is yours. Dignity, voice, peace. This is detachment. This is healing without hardening. Gentle encouragement. Healing is not instant. Some days you will feel strong, other days you will ache again. But even in the ache, you are still healing, because you are no longer blaming yourself, no longer silencing yourself, no longer hardening into stone. You are walking the softer, stronger path. Closing. Arcan, this is the gift of awakening. Once you see silence for what it truly is, you can begin to heal without losing yourself. You can stand with boundaries, yet still hold tenderness. You can reclaim your dignity, yet still choose compassion. You can detach, yet still believe in love. Silence is not only absence, it is a teacher, a mirror, a doorway into truths we cannot see when the world is loud. If you have ever been ignored, overlooked, or abandoned, you know the sting. But in that sting lies a secret. Silence carries wisdom for those willing to listen. The psychological lens psychology teaches us that silence is rarely neutral. It reflects patterns, attachments, and unspoken dynamics. Think of your earliest attachments, caregivers who responded inconsistently, friends who left unpredictably, loved ones whose attention was conditional. Every unanswered call, every moment of invisibility echoes those early experiences. Silence triggers the attachment wound. The mind interprets it as abandonment. The heart interprets it as proof that love is unreliable. And yet, in this echo, there is a lesson. Silence forces you to confront what you truly need from others, and, crucially, what you cannot control. It teaches you that your worth does not depend on external acknowledgement. The spiritual lens faith offers a parallel insight. Consider the prophets, the saints, the faithful, who prayed for years without immediate response. Their prayers were met with silence, and in that silence they were refined, strengthened, and drawn deeper into trust. God's silence is never rejection. It is a crucible. It is the refining fire that purifies our patience, cultivates endurance, and deepens reliance on something eternal rather than fleeting human approval. Silence, as teacher, silence teaches three profound truths. Patience. The world does not always respond on our schedule. Learning to wait cultivates inner strength, detachment. We cannot control others. Their responses, or lack thereof, are not ours to carry. Self-discovery. In the quiet, we meet ourselves. The parts of us that seek validation, that crave acceptance, that fear being unseen, all of it comes into view. Through both psychology and faith, silence becomes less an enemy and more a guide. Story of reflection. Consider Maya, who had longed for her father's approval. Every achievement was met with minimal acknowledgement. Years of silence had left her questioning her value. One day, in therapy, she was asked, "What does his silence reveal about him, not you?" It was a revelation. His absence was not a measure of her worth, but a reflection of his own limitations, his inability to nurture. In faith, she later prayed, releasing the expectation of response. In that quiet surrender, she found a new source of validation, not from others, but from God, who sees the unseen. Silence as mirror in psychology. Silence mirrors our unresolved wounds. When someone ignores us, it stirs the fear of being unworthy. But once we recognize this as an echo of past attachment patterns, it transforms. The mirror shifts. We no longer see ourselves as flawed. We see the unresolved story inside us that needs care. Silence invites introspection. It asks, why does this wound hurt so deeply? What am I projecting onto this situation? What is within my power to heal? In this, silence is gentle, even if it feels harsh. Silence as a spiritual crucible. Faith reframes silence as a sacred process. Think of a seed buried in darkness. It cannot grow above ground until it has endured the weight of soil, the pressure of earth, and the stillness of the dark. Silence is the soil that nurtures unseen growth. It teaches resilience. It refines character. It deepens trust not in the world, but in the eternal source of love. Those who emerge from the silence with faith intact often discover a richer, more compassionate heart, able to give and receive love without clinging or fear. The balance of inner work, healing without hardening, as we explored in the previous section, intersects here with wisdom. Psychology offers tools: awareness, reflection, journaling, therapy, self-compassion. Faith offers context, trust, surrender, meditation, prayer, and the understanding that life's silence is never meaningless. The interplay of both creates a balance, grounded in reality, elevated by transcendence. Story of transformation. Ethan had been ghosted repeatedly by a partner he loved dearly. The silence crushed him. Therapy helped him understand his attachment wounds. He feared abandonment because he had experienced it as a child. Faith taught him that God's presence was constant, even when human love failed. Through reflection, he learned that silence was not a judgment on his worth. He could honor his feelings of hurt while simultaneously releasing them. Over time, Ethan found clarity. He could give love without needing validation, and receive it without clinging to fear. Metaphor. The river and the rock. Think of silence like a river flowing around a rock. At first, the rock is battered, worn down by the relentless current. It feels as though the water is cruel, endless, merciless. But over time, the rock is reshaped, not broken, but refined. Smooth edges, polished surfaces, a new form emerges. Silence flows around us in much the same way. It is relentless, it is challenging, but it is shaping us, refining us, preparing us to emerge stronger, gentler, and wiser. Practical reflection. Here's how you can invite the wisdom of silence into your life. Observe your reactions. Notice what feelings silence triggers.
Anger, fear, insecurity.
Awareness is the first step toward transformation. Journal the lessons. Write about what the silence may be revealing about others, about yourself, and about your faith journey. Practice patience. Use silence as an opportunity to cultivate inner steadiness rather than rushing to resolve it externally. Surrender expectations. Let go of needing explanations or apologies. Allow life to unfold on its own timeline. Seek stillness. Meditation, prayer, or mindful breathing turns the inner storm into a space of growth. The hidden gifts. Silence is paradoxical. It wounds, yet teaches. It isolates, yet illuminates. It frustrates, yet strengthens. When you accept it as a teacher, rather than an enemy, you gain something invaluable: perspective. You see that human silence often reflects limitations, fear, or distraction. Divine silence often reflects preparation, refinement, and trust. And in both, your heart learns to navigate life without crumbling, without clinging, without bitterness. Closing reflection. The wisdom of silence is subtle.
It does not shout. It does not demand.
It whispers, quietly guiding those who are willing to listen. Through the lens of psychology, it reveals attachment patterns, vulnerabilities, and the lessons hidden in rejection. Through the lens of faith, it offers patience, endurance, and the quiet reassurance that love, in its highest form, never abandons, and when both lenses are embraced together, silence transforms from a wound into a doorway, leading toward clarity. Resilience and inner peace after storms, after silence, after long nights of wondering if anyone sees you. There comes a moment of quiet, a quiet that is not empty, a quiet that holds space for your breath, your thoughts, your heart. This is the place where healing deepens, where you begin to find yourself again. Solitude is strength. We often fear being alone, thinking it is loneliness. But solitude is not a punishment, it is a sanctuary. In the quiet, you begin to notice the small things, the rhythm of your breath, the pulse of your heart, the rise and fall of your thoughts. It is here, in your own presence, that you discover an astonishing truth. You are enough. The silence that once hurt you now teaches you patience. The space once filled with absence now becomes fertile ground for self-discovery. Reclaiming, joy does not return all at once. It comes softly in fragments. A smile at a memory, a cup of tea in the morning, a song that touches your soul. Each tiny spark is a reminder. Your worth is not measured by attention, acknowledgement, or applause. It is measured by your capacity to feel, to breathe, to exist fully, tenderly, and without apology. When the world has ignored you, reclaiming joy is an act of quiet defiance. It says, I am here, I matter, I can still love and be loved. The beauty of being seen by yourself. One of the greatest gifts of reflection is learning to see yourself. Not through the lens of others' silence, but through your own eyes. Look at your hands, your scars, your smile. Notice the resilience that carried you through nights of doubt. Notice the kindness you still carry despite being overlooked. Being ignored cannot erase the soul that has endured, learned, and grown. Your existence is a testimony to your courage. Metaphor. The garden of quiet, imagine. A garden that has been neglected. Weeds have grown, and the flowers seemed forgotten. Now imagine walking in and noticing the tiny buds pushing through the soil. Slowly, with care, you clear the weeds, water the roots, tend to the blossoms. This is reflection. It is tending to yourself. The silence was the winter, the neglect was the frost, but now, with patience and gentle attention, your garden blooms again. Story of renewal. Lena had been overlooked by her colleagues,
Ignored by a friend she trusted, and even questioned by family who never understood her heart. For years,
she measured herself through their eyes, shrinking when no one acknowledged her. One evening, sitting by the window with the city lights flickering below, Lena realized, I have been here all along. I have survived.
I have endured. I am still whole.
In time, Lena noticed something remarkable. The world's silence no longer held power over her heart. She had reclaimed her own attention, her own love, her own worth. Reflection as a ritual. Reflection is not passive. It is an active ritual. You can carve moments each day to sit quietly, breathe deeply, and notice your inner world. Ask, what am I feeling right now?
What do I need that I have denied myself?
Where has silence shown me my own strength? In these gentle inquiries, you reconnect with your inner light, the part of you that has always existed, waiting patiently for recognition, finding meaning in the silence. Silence is no longer a wound, it is a teacher, a mirror, a guide. You begin to understand that being ignored does not define your story. The absence of recognition from others simply punctuates the presence of your own resilience, your own voice, your own soul. Each moment of quiet reflection becomes a meditation on survival, on growth, on the beauty of simply continuing to exist fully and tenderly. Metaphor? The lighthouse picture. A lighthouse standing on a cliff, battered by storms, lashed by waves, its light unseen by passing ships. Even when ignored, the lighthouse continues to shine. Its purpose is not diminished by those who fail to notice it. Its light remains constant, steady, unwavering. This is you.
Quiet, enduring, luminous.
Even when the world overlooks you, your light persists. Embracing forgiveness, reflection allows you to move toward forgiveness, not for their sake, but for yours. Forgiveness does not erase the hurt,
It does not justify the silence.
but it lifts the weight from your own shoulders, freeing your heart to feel again without bitterness. You can forgive the friend who vanished, the lover who ghosted, the colleague who ignored you, and even the family who didn't notice. You do not condone the silence, you simply reclaim your power and peace. Practical steps in reflection daily journaling. Write down moments of silence and your reactions. Note what you learned about yourself. Mindful breathing. Inhale your strength, exhale the weight of neglect. Self-compassion affirmations. Speak to yourself kindly. I am enough. I am seen. I am worthy. Celebrate small wins. Every moment you choose joy, reflection, and presence is a victory over the pain of being ignored. Meditate on light. Visualize yourself as the lighthouse, steady and luminous, regardless of external acknowledgement. Story of Hope Marcus had spent years feeling invisible, overlooked by co-workers and friends alike. Reflection was uncomfortable at first. He was not used to listening to his own voice without judgment. Over time, Marcus began to notice small joys, the way morning sunlight warmed his face, the laughter of his niece, the satisfaction of finishing a project on his own terms. He realized that being ignored by others could not erase the life he was building inside himself. With each day, Marcus reclaimed a piece of his own worth, slowly knitting his heart back together with tenderness, patience,
And love. The quiet power, reflection in the quiet builds a subtle, unshakable power. It is not loud or aggressive.
It does not seek recognition or applause. It simply exists, a deep knowing that you have endured, that you have learned, that you are still here. In this quiet, you find stability. You find clarity. You find yourself again. Closing reflection, the storm has passed. The silence has spoken. The lessons have been learned. Now in the quiet, you can sit with your own heart. Notice its resilience. Notice its softness. Notice the beauty of a soul that continues to love, to hope, to shine, even after being ignored. This is the gentle landing your heart has been waiting for. The space where peace replaces doubt, hope replaces despair, and the whisper of your own voice carries more weight than any external acknowledgement ever could. If you have listened, if you have felt the ache, the silence, the longing, know this: you were never invisible, not to the universe, not to God, not even to yourself. Even when no one else seemed to see you, your heart, your courage, your tender soul, and your quiet resilience have always been visible to the one who knows every thought, every tear, every unspoken word, affirming your worth. You are worthy, not because someone noticed you, not because someone responded, not because applause or acknowledgement arrived, but because you exist. Your worth is not borrowed from attention. It is inherent, eternal, unshakable. No silence can erase it. No absence can diminish it. And no past neglect can change the light that has always been within you. Blessing of presence. I bless you now with presence. The quiet, steady presence of your own heart. May you feel yourself fully in every moment and recognize your existence matters, your voice matters, your feelings matter. May you sit with your own soul and know that it has survived every storm, every silence, every shadow, and has emerged tender, resilient, and luminous. Blessing of peace. I bless you with peace, the kind that does not depend on approval or acknowledgement from others. May your heart rest in the knowledge that being ignored does not define you, that absence is not rejection, and that silence often speaks only about the limitations of others, not your value. May your nights be gentle, your breaths deep, and your spirit steady, as you learn to carry your own light with grace and quiet strength. Blessing of courage. I bless you with courage, the courage to continue loving, trusting and giving without hardening your heart. May you stand firm in your dignity, speak your truth, and set boundaries without fear. May you step into life knowing that each moment of vulnerability is a testament to your bravery, and that your softness is not weakness, but an extraordinary form of strength. Blessing of vision. I bless you with vision, the ability to see clearly the lessons hidden in silence, the wisdom in solitude, and the subtle guidance in life's quiet moments. May you recognize that every unanswered call, every overlooked gesture, every absence has brought you closer to understanding yourself, refining your spirit, and awakening the depth of your own soul. May your eyes be gentle, yet discerning, your heart open, yet protected, your mind clear, yet compassionate. Blessing of renewal. I bless you with renewal, the renewal that comes from reflection, patience, and the quiet rebuilding of your inner world. May you tend to your heart like a sacred garden, nurturing what is true, clearing what no longer serves you, and allowing each tender bloom to flourish. May your days be filled with moments of quiet joy, small victories, and gentle celebrations of the self you are becoming, the self that has endured, grown,
and will continue to shine. Blessing of connection. I bless you with connection, not the fleeting validation of the inattentive,
but the deep, abiding connection with those who truly see you. May you find friends who honor your presence, lovers who cherish your soul, and companions who respect your boundaries and celebrate your gifts. And above all, may you feel the unbroken connection with God, the eternal witness who has never looked away, who has never ignored your heart, and who has held you close through every moment of doubt, fear, or pain. Blessing of hope. I bless you with hope, the hope that every silence carries the potential for understanding, that every absence can reveal your own strength, and that every shadow is followed by light. May you step forward knowing that your story is unfolding exactly as it should, that your journey is sacred, and that every chapter, even the quiet or lonely ones,
has meaning. May hope rise in you not as a fragile flicker,
but as a steady flame guiding you through life's uncertainties, reminding you that you are seen, cherished,
and infinitely loved. Closing reflection. So now,
breathe deeply, slowly. Feel your heart beating, your spirit steady, your presence undeniable. You are here. You have endured. You have learned. You have grown. And you are loved. Every tear you shed, every silent moment you endured, every doubt you survived has shaped a soul that is tender, resilient, and luminous, even when the world was quiet.
Even when voices failed, even when recognition never came, you were never invisible. You are seen.
You are honored. You are whole. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of being truly seen. Step forward gently, carry your light, and remember, the world has always been waiting for the fullness of your presence.